What's up guys, it's Pio here. Today we're going to be talking about Pro Guides. It's a channel that posts educational content for Counter-Strike, and it is catered for beginners mostly. From the outside, their videos look well edited, the thumbnail, the video transitions, and effects look great, but that isn't the main focus of today's video. I'm going to be talking about the substance of their content and why I think you guys, especially the beginners, should take it with a grain of salt. I am not the first person to create a critique video on Pro Guides, but in this video, I'll keep it focused on their Counter-Strike content. Before the video continues, I would just like to say that these are my views, and obviously our opinions may differ. I would also like to add that I respect Pro Guides as persons. I would just like to point out the flaws of their content from my perspective. Please don't spam their channel with hate comments, as that isn't the goal of this video. So without further ado, let's begin. Pro Guides' video titles can sometimes be misleading. Let's take this video for example. 10 reasons why your aim sucks. CSGO tips and tricks. Remember that title. I'll save you the trouble of watching the whole thing, so here's a summary of their video. They give out some decent advice on why some people struggle with their aim, but the problem here is that their other tips aren't even closely related to aiming. So here's the summary again. Number 1, not warming up. That's true, I can't say anything bad about that. Number 2, changing your sensitivity. That's also true. People need to stop changing their sensitivity after having like 2 bad games in a row. Number 3, poor spray control. It's kinda unrelated because spray control is a different mechanic from aiming. Number 4, re-peeking. This is unrelated because this is more of a decision-making concept. Number 5, running and gunning. This is more of a movement mistake because the player doesn't counter-strafe properly with rifles. The narrator suggested shooting while standing still, which is a good advice for new players. But his other suggestion was to shift walk spray. This is just wrong in my opinion. It might work on low ranks where players take a long time to kill each other, but shift walk spraying is just a crutch and a bad habit. Your player model is so easy to hit and your accuracy is messed up. Suggesting something like a crab walk spray might have been more acceptable in my opinion. Their 6th reason is crosshair placement. I also think that this is a different mechanic to aim, but I guess it's acceptable because decent crosshair placement gives you easier and more consistent kills compared to relying on your flick aim. 7th reason, pushing everything. This has nothing to do with aim itself as it's more on your playstyle and decision making. 8th reason, positioning. This is a different concept of its own, so I don't know why it's added in the video. Number 9, quick switching. Same explanation as the last, this has nothing to do with aiming. And number 10, copying pro configs. This is acceptable I guess, but this could have been merged with reason 2 in my opinion. The video title is just misleading in general. If it was titled like 10 bad habits you need to fix to become more consistent, it would have been more acceptable compared to naming it as 10 reasons why your aim sucks. Let's not even talk about the cringy jokes throughout the video that the viewers had to go through. Some of you might not be convinced, so here's another misleading video. 10 AK tips for easy headshots, CSGO episode 2. I'll summarize the entire video and here are the tips they provided. Play headshot angles. Playing HS angles means you are harder to hit, but it is more of a positioning concept than an aiming one. Take 50-50 engagements against M4s. Okay, that's fine I guess, but a duel between an AK and an M4 isn't necessarily a 50-50 fight, but okay. 3. Practice like Nico in FFA deathmatch. This is a good tip, I guess. Number 4. Angle clearing. This is also a good tip because it can help with your crosshair placement, thus landing easier headshots. Number 5. Watching demos. I'm not sure how this connects with getting AK headshots, but I'm guessing you can point out your crosshair placement mistakes in a demo. Number 6. Playing with your team. This has no relation to AK headshots whatsoever, to be honest. And I think this is where it gets worse. Number 7. Learning grenades. Has no relation to AK headshots. Don't buy without armor. Did they really put this in an AK headshot video? Number 9. Don't chase ecos. This is more of a playstyle or decision-making tip. I don't think it has anything to do with AK headshots, to be honest. And number 10, be calm. It's a good tip. Again, the video is misleading. The title is telling you about AK headshots, but the video sprinkled some tips that aren't even related to it. The tips are fine and all, but what do they have to do with clicking heads with an AK? These videos have been such a head-scratching experience, but let's continue. Some videos flat out give questionable advice. Insane secret technique to win every CT side. This video, in my opinion, is just misleading and wrong on so many levels. They are trying to convince the viewers to go for a triple op setup because it is the insane secret to win every CT side. Firstly, who wrote this script and thought that triple opping is viable? Secondly, your team economy will be in shambles if you try this. You will have to eco or half by a lot, which would mean more rounds lost. And thirdly, have fun retaking with 3 ops. I'll paraphrase, but here's what they said afterward. The triple ops counter general matchmaking play where people solo dry peek everything. They eventually explained the downsides like the expensiveness of the ops, having to retake, and the vulnerability to executes. They even provided counter arguments on why the downsides aren't as bad as it seems. ProGuide said, and I quote, "Retaking won't be difficult as long as the rifles stay alive. The triple op can be afforded by smart economy management. And lastly, executes don't really happen in pugs." I'll debunk their counter arguments now by saying, retaking with an op is already difficult and sometimes teams prefer to save if they have ops on the retake. But let's say that your team triple opt as they suggested. So you can go like 1 op window, 1 op ticket, and 1 op short. That leaves your 2 rifles to play on a site each. So let's assume that the T's take B successfully. That almost guarantees that your rifler died defending the site. Let's be generous and assume that the opper on short survived. But guess what? Your team will be retaking with 3 ops and 1 rifle. The round is pretty much over at this point unless you pull some hero plays or the enemies walk into your ops. The triple op can be afforded by smart economy management. No, it is not. You will have to sacrifice utility and or armor to even afford this during gun rounds. Having little utility means you are more susceptible to basic executes and rushes. Well, executes don't really happen in pugs. Yes they do. Unless you are referring to the lowest of the low type of pugs where people run around with 0 smokes and flashes, your average gold players most likely know simple AXX smokes for Mirage and can probably throw their own flashes. These videos are something else, man. I don't really know. I'm just at the 1 minute mark and I already want to stop watching this video, but let's continue anyway. If you win the pistol round, you should have 3 players buy SMGs with low utility while the other 2 players buy rifles. If a matchmaking stack did this, there is a high chance they lose the anti-eco or the anti-force buy. You need utility, especially on anti-ecos, to stop early rushes. If you have 2 rifles and 3 SMGs with few grenades, then the team barely has any utility. And if there aren't any mollies to stop a push, the pistol buy of the terrorists will close in and overwhelm the defenders. The triple op setup only materializes by the 4th or the 5th round because it is expensive as hell. It requires the team to win the pistol round, anti-eco, and the bonus round if possible. And if you lose the triple op gun round, your team now has little money and you have to save 2 or 3 rounds to even afford ops again. Given the current meta, the economy already favors the terrorists in the early game, which makes it difficult to build an economy if you lose 2 to 3 players every round you win. This goes back to my point earlier. Triple ops are not viable because they are expensive. Okay, let's move on. By the 4-minute mark, they explain how having 3 ops means the enemies are bound to run into an op, which is difficult to deal with even for faceit players. I'm becoming extremely nitpicky here, but your average Faceit players are probably decent enough to counter a triple op setup. I don't know where that guy got that from, and honestly at this point, I'm gonna stop watching the video because I feel like nothing that comes after this will ever redeem what they said in the first 4 minutes of the video. What's concerning for me is that newer players looking to improve at the game will stumble upon these types of videos and think that the tips are 100% correct. They get hooked in by the misleading title with the promise of instantly improving, but instead they are fed with questionable advice. And for those players out there looking for a definitive improvement guide, just check out the following content creators. If I missed any, comment down below. Moving on to my last critique on pro guides. The tips they give are so repetitive. It's like the video is just titled differently, but the tips provided are just the same ones, but they rephrased it a little bit. I feel like the typical formula for their videos would be something like, how to get good at XYZ. Then the typical advice would be, you have to practice ABC, you have to improve your crosshair placement, you have to watch demos, whatever. Then they pick some concepts from this skill tree, then rephrase them a little bit so that it favors their title. Rinse and repeat. If they're just going to repeat the same tips and tricks in their videos, then they don't have anything new to offer for new players. But don't get me wrong, some of the tips they give out are decent, I guess, for new players. I just think that their writing is flawed because it wasn't proofread or fact-checked. So that wraps up today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.